Personal confidence, something that I try to push into my classroom and my students.
This same elementary school teacher, who was once named Teacher of the Year, now straight up admits she sexually assaulted two preteen boys who were once her students.
Is that true?
Yes. Investigators found one of the boys' photos in her wallet when she was arrested. They also found an overwhelming amount of disturbing evidence, including explicit texts, photos, and even videos. So let's get right into it. The defendant we're focusing on today is 35-year-old Jacqueline Ma, who at the time of her arrest was an elementary school teacher. Jacqueline began teaching 5th and 6th grade students back in 2023. All of this happened in National City, California, which is just south of San Diego. In 2022, she was actually honored by the San Diego County Office of Education for her exemplary work as a teacher. She even appeared on the local news there to talk about her Teacher of the Year award.
Just being that champion for those students, allowing them to believe in themselves and see themselves the way that you believe in them.
Just 1 year after this interview was shot and Jacqueline won this Teacher of the Year award, she was arrested at her school, Lincoln Acres Elementary School, on allegations of child sexual assault. All of this started when a 12-year-old student's mother started to see some red flags. The mom suspected there may be an inappropriate relationship going on between her son and Jacqueline Ma, so she reported it. When Jacqueline was arrested at the school and investigators went through her belongings, they found a picture of this same 12-year-old boy tucked away in Jacqueline's wallet. They also found her jewelry. It even had the boy's initials on it. They also found some love letters inside of her classroom. Prosecutors later learned that Jacqueline had been talking to this boy for about 10 months. She was arrested, booked, and then released on bail, but that didn't last very long. She was arrested once again when investigators found evidence of child pornography. Since that arrest, she's been denied bail. So when investigators were taking a look through all of her data, they found that she sent this 12-year-old boy sexually explicit photos and even coerced this boy to send her some pics back. When the boy didn't respond or took too long, she got frustrated. According to the San Diego Tribune, this boy once wrote her a message saying, quote, "Sometimes I don't think you understand that I am a kid still." Detectives later revealed that the boy's mom found messages from Jacqueline, his teacher, on the tablet, and in the messages, she asked him to delete some of them. She also asked him to turn on vanishing mode so the messages would just disappear. They also found a bunch of messages on a hidden app on her phone. Now, at a preliminary hearing back in December, detectives read from some screenshots of these messages. One read, quote, "Do not forget my underwear is in your pocket." In another message, she wrote, quote, "I love you too, like I'm actually in love with you." Months later, investigators slapped Jacqueline with even more charges when a second victim came to light. This time, the boy was only 11 years old when the abuse began. Prosecutors say Jacqueline called this student into her classroom and took off her shirt. The boy said she tried to get close to him, but he got scared, so he was able to leave. Prosecutors say she groomed both of these boys by buying them gifts, clothing, and even some gaming stuff. Initially, Jacqueline faced 19 felony charges and was expected to go to trial in April. But this month, a shocking plea deal was announced as Jacqueline owned up to all this abuse.
Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
On February 5th, Jacqueline Ma pleaded guilty to 4 felony charges. 2 counts of lewd acts with a child under age 14 with duress, lewd act involving a child under age 14, and possessing material containing a minor engaged in or simulating sexual conduct. After news of her conviction broke, the National School District Superintendent released a statement. It reads in part, quote, "2 years ago, when we learned of the allegations of inappropriate physical activity between this former educator and a minor, we were stunned to our core. Although she was immediately placed on unpaid status and has been detained ever since, I want to assure our school community that with this guilty plea, we are now able to formally move to terminate her employment with the district." What's ahead now is sentencing. Jacqueline Ma originally faced 165 years to life, but with this new plea deal, she's up against 30 to life. Now, from here, I've got to bring on criminal defense attorney and law and crime legal analyst Julie Rendelman to talk about the case. And Julie, we've talked about so many of these stories here on Law and Crime. I honestly lost count of the number of teachers there are that are convicted of sexually assaulting their students. It's just unbelievable across the board. But here, to me, it almost adds another layer because these are pre-teenage boys, elementary school age children. I mean, it just makes it so much worse to me. What do you think?
We've spoken about these cases more times than I can even count. Most of the cases do that we've spoken about do tend to involve older children, still teenagers, but somewhere between 16, 17, sometimes 18, where a teacher takes on an inappropriate role with them. This, unfortunately, is unique to the extent that the children are so young and even more impressionable than those of a bit older age.
Just to be clear, I think it's deplorable. It's illegal across the board, no matter the age of anyone. But this one, I agree with you, the fact that they're so much younger. And this case, for some reason, is hitting me different than the other ones. I think it's because before I worked at Law and Crime, I taught in an elementary school. So I taught kindergarten. And this is the same school, like the same kindergarten to sixth grade. I would have been in the same school as this teacher. And it just makes me so stressed out and disgusted to think about these kids who are going to their teacher for honestly emotional support. Like, yes, they're learning, but also this teacher knows a lot about their personal life. These kids are confiding in them. So to me, it just seems like a major abuse of trust.
Absolutely. And remember, like, at least in one of the cases, we know from the mother of the victim that it seems like she was grooming this child for months. I think they even described it as like 10 months of grooming. And so, yeah, when you think about a parent entrusting their children to this community, to a school, particularly in this case where you have a teacher that's quote unquote was considered the teacher of the year from her district, it's so appalling. The one thing I think that's changed over the years is, again, I go back to this whole issue of having cell phones, texts, emails. Some of these so many of these incidents happened years before, but they weren't able to prove it. It was just the child's word against the adult figure in the room. Now, particularly in this case, you have texts that back up what these children say. And you can only imagine what is in the mind of a teacher who doesn't recognize that these texts are eventually going to be found.
That is the question I ask in every single one of these cases. I truly cannot wrap my brain around the fact that people take photos or have texts, videos. I just don't understand it. In this case, I'm grateful that it happened, though, because we do have some pretty solid evidence. And as you pointed out, this teacher was texting or messaging on some sort of application, one of the students, and asked him to delete the messages, and then asked him to put on vanish mode so that they would disappear, and also was speaking to him on an app that was hidden. So to me, her saying all these things, hey, get rid of it, let's hide it, all of that, huge consciousness of guilt at the very least, right?
Oh, absolutely, to say the least. And it also just it shows the incredible manipulation. I think a lot of people like to think about these scenarios where an older kid is the victim of a teacher that sometimes is fairly close in age. We've seen that, and so some people perhaps don't have the empathy or the understanding to grasp that regardless of the closeness in age, whether it's 16 and 24, there is still the teacher is still in a position of authority. Just imagine now a scenario where you have children that haven't even reached puberty, that are being manipulated into hiding things from their parents, and quite frankly, picking the students that she thinks will best be able to be manipulated, best be able to continue the crimes that she's committing.
That's what I'm saying throughout all of this. You really touched on it there. The fact that these kids are so young, preteen, they're not even in their teens as of yet. So, of course, they're going to respect and trust the teacher who won Teacher of the Year. Their parents probably wanted them to be in that class because they thought that she would be a good teacher. It's just wild to think about all of that. But you mentioned grooming, and I wanted to go back to that because there were reports that she bought them things like clothes, or they were into gaming, so she bought them some gaming stuff. And one point you also pointed out the fact that it was over 10 months. So this isn't just a one-time thing, 1 week, 1 month. This is almost a year if we're going to round up. So the grooming process too, does that show that she had intent here to commit these crimes?
I don't know that you even need any of the grooming in order to prove intent. The minute that a text is sent requesting whether it be a naked photo or sending a photo for herself, there's no question what the intent is. I think the fact that this is a teacher that is grooming, that's manipulating these children, trying to figure out, are they amenable? Are they going to be the child that she can get to do those things? Just makes it all the more despicable.
We have a lot of evidence in the way of all of that. Photos, there are videos, both explicit of her and other ones that she coerced one or both of these boys to take. So thankfully, in a way, we have the evidence to yield a conviction, but it's still crazy to me that she would even keep any of this on record, so to speak. The other evidence I want to talk about, though, is just super creepy. When she was arrested and investigators went through her wallet, her purse, they found a photo of one of the students in her wallet, not a class photo, a photo of this specific child. Then she had love notes. She had some jewelry that had his initials on it. That to me is just so scary and creepy. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, look, it certainly shows. I don't want to excuse it. I am not excusing it, but there seems to be some clear mental health issues. There is no reasonable individual that is going to not only commit these type of crimes, but then kind of keep, a souvenir from them. In a sense, there's almost an obsession with these children. And one wonders, I hate to say this, but when we think about who chooses to become a teacher, we expect that someone becomes a teacher because they want to teach children. They want to navigate their lives in the most positive of ways. And you start to wonder, is this someone that actually got involved in education for the purpose of grooming these young children?
That is so sad to even think about, because if I go back to when I taught at school, we had a whole section of our handbook talking about sexual assault, inappropriate contact with children. We had to go through all of these training sessions to make sure we know what's right and what's wrong. And I'm sure her district had something in place at the very least to know that this is wrong. You brought up mental health. I think that that could be something here. Eventually, she did go to a plea deal, though. There was supposed to be a trial date set for April, and then we kind of had this surprise. Okay, she's going to plead. What do you think? I mean, she had, I believe it was 19 charges against her, and then she pled to 4. Does all of that make sense to you?
It does. I mean, Sierra, are either of us really surprised that this case didn't go to trial? I mean, this is not the case that you're going to want to sit in front of a jury of 12 and try to hope that they're going to somehow buy your defense, because I don't know what the defense would be. So I think it was, even though we're surprised, I think if we thought about, we all knew it was coming. The question was, what was that plea deal going to look like? She was looking at, I think, over 180 years if she didn't plead and she was found guilty. And one would be hard pressed unless there was some proof that it wasn't her. She wasn't really a teacher. It wasn't really her phone. It really wasn't really her pictures, which I think would be almost impossible to prove. And so I think she did what she needed to do, which was take responsibility with the hope that she'll be cut a break by the prosecutor and the judge.
You're right in that a lot of these cases do end in plea deals, and we could have kind of guessed that this case was going in that way. Prosecutors talked about something important in this too, that they said they were hoping for a plea deal because they didn't want these young children to have to get on the stand and testify and go through the trauma of everything that had happened previously. Do you think that's one of the major reasons why they were eager to have this plea deal, not to re-victimize the kids?
So I think it comes from both sides. I think, yes, the prosecutor doesn't want to put them on the stand for their own well-being. I'm sure the parents don't want to put their children on the stand. And I'm sure at the same time, the defense, doesn't want to put them on the stand because can you imagine a jury's thoughts when an 11, 12-year-old, maybe a little older now, has to get up and talk about what their teacher did to them and how that would look in the eyes of the jury. So I don't think it's beneficial to the defense either to have that situation. I think it looks better in front of the judge if she takes at least some level of responsibility.
And it sounds like she did. I mean, she pleaded guilty, so that unto itself is her accepting responsibility. But at one point, the judge said, "Is all of this true?" And she said, "Yes, this is true." So she did kind of fess up to all of it. As far as the sentencing, you pointed this out. Originally, had she gone to trial and been found guilty, she faced over a century of sentencing of life in prison. It was 100 some years to life potentially. Now she only faces 30 to life. Still, to me, I'm confused how it's a win for her. It shouldn't be a win for her, but I'm saying her defense coming forward and saying, yeah, we're going to accept this because she could face life either way.
Well, right, but you have an opportunity to get out sooner if the time period is less, and so that's what I think she's banking on. And don't forget, also, if you are found guilty after trial, there's a potential that a judge could sentence you to consecutive time for each of the victims separately. So there is something to be gained about taking responsibility. And quite frankly, when it comes to an eventual potential parole board, the fact that she took responsibility early can also be a factor. Don't forget, Sierra, even if she ever gets out, we're talking about registering as a sex offender, potentially for life. This is never a person that's going to ever see a school or any type of child facility, no matter what age she is.
That's a great point. The fact that she won't have any access to children if she is released. I'm really glad that you pointed that out because that's so important to keep everyone safe. As far as your guess for the future, sentencing is for a couple of months from now. What do you think would be appropriate or what do you expect from the judge to hand down?
So I think we're going to see quite on the high end. I'll note something that stood out to me when one of the children responded to her via text, when she kind of was upset that he wasn't responding to her. He makes a comment saying, do you realize how old I am? Trying to get her to understand I'm just a child trying to deal with an adult pushing me to do things that I'm not comfortable doing. If I was the judge, that is going to be the line that I bring up at the sentencing, to really hone in on the fact of how I keep using the word this despicable. I have children of my own. I can't even fathom all the parents who have children that go to that school, and what they feel and the emotions they must feel knowing that any one of them, by the way, forgetting the two kids, but who else could have been the potential victim for her. And I don't think the judge is going to cut her any slack, nor do I think the judge should.
Overall, this case is just heartbreaking and so upsetting on so many levels, but hopefully this is some form of justice for the families in at least some way. Julie Rendelman, thank you so much for coming on with us today and walking us through the case.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Ma is due back in court on May 8th for sentencing. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.